Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the What If guy. Back with another fanfiction. This is the first part of What If Issei Turned Dark Emperor. Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. In this dark alternate take on the arc of high school DXD, the main protagonist, Issei Hayu, faces a devastating defeat against Risavim Levon Lucifer. This loss leads to the tragic death of both of Issei's parents and leaves Asia Argento gravely injured. Issei himself suffers severe injuries, and in a moment of sacrifice, Drake, his dragon partner, gives his life to save him from Risavim's final attack, or so it is believed. Risavim revels in his victory, declaring that with Drake gone and Issei incapacitated, he is unstoppable. Issei, overwhelmed by grief, cries out for Drake before losing consciousness from blood loss. Months pass, and Issei finally awakens from his coma. He reflects on the surreal experience of his long sleep and wonders about the whereabouts of his friends. The nurse informs him that he has been unconscious for 4 months due to the severity of his injuries and emotional trauma. She reveals that while his friends stopped visiting after 2 weeks, Azazel, the governor of the fallen angels, remained hopeful and visited daily. Issei feels a mix of gratitude and disappointment. He learns that Asia is still in a coma, her condition far worse than his. The sight of her struggling for life, bandaged and on life support, brings tears to his eyes. He wishes that his friends had shown her the same care they had shown him. Determined to leave the hospital on his own, Issei heads home to Kuo, unaware of the shocking reality awaiting him. Upon his return, he discovers that Rias and the other girls have moved on, neglecting him during his time of need. To his dismay, he learns that they have been unfaithful, seeking comfort in the arms of other men. As he reaches his home, Issei hears Rias's voice, seemingly in distress. Confused, he enters to find her with Yuto Kiba, his once trusted ally. The betrayal stings deeply as he confronts Rias about her infidelity. He expresses his disbelief and hurt, recalling how he had hoped to surprise her upon awakening. Feeling crushed, he decides to leave, unable to bear the weight of her excuses. Rias pleads for him to stay, but Issei, filled with rage and sorrow, refuses to listen. In a moment of anger, he unleashes a dragon shot, missing its intended target but causing significant damage. With a heavy heart, he flies away, unaware that Rias and the other girls have all betrayed him. As time passes, Issei learns of the other betrayals, including from his childhood friend Irina, who not only cheats on him but also belittles him. Seeking solace, he turns to Azazel, who is relieved to see him awake but furious about the actions of the ORC members. At a faction meeting, Issei is met with surprise from the leaders, including Surzex and Michael. However, the atmosphere shifts when Surzex declares that, with Drake's death, Issei is no longer the Red Dragon Emperor and is thus removed from Team DXD. Both Issei and Azazel are left in shock, realizing the extent of Issei's abandonment by those he once considered allies. He would have definitely tried to stop them. Issei was still quite strong even without the boosted gear, capable of holding his own against Surzex due to his dragon physiology. However, he was currently mentally unstable and unable to think tactically. Yasaka stated that since Issei was now useless, he would no longer be needed in the Team DXD and would be expelled from the alliance. She declared that he would also be removed from Rias Gremory's peerage, emphasizing that he was no longer needed. Continuing from the previous events, Issei Hayu was seen running toward what appeared to be a jungle, away from the town of Kuro. He bore scars and was badly wounded from his fight with the faction, but he had managed to inflict significant damage on them. He couldn't believe they had betrayed him. He questioned why he deserved such treatment, reflecting on his past actions. Despite being a pervert, he felt he had never harassed anyone or done anything wrong. With his parents gone and Asia in a coma, he felt utterly alone in a cursed world. In a flashback, Issei was plowing through the faction with relentless force. Rias Gremory and her peerage were badly injured, while Yasaka, Kuroka, and Irina lay unresponsive. Issei was delivering a fierce assault on Sona Citri and her queen, Tsubaki Shinra, who were unable to defend themselves against his onslaught. Suddenly, an unexpected voice broke through the chaos. Valle had joined the fight, attempting to stop his brother's rampage. He activated his balance break to intervene, but Issei, weakened by exhaustion from battling a faction leader and 3 peerages, struggled to keep up with Valle. Azazel watched in shock as Valle stepped in. Valle pleaded with Issei to stop, expressing his concern for the former friends they had become. He couldn't bear to see Issei in such a state. Issei, however, was furious and reminded Valle that he had not experienced the loss of his sacred gear or witnessed the sacrifices made for him. He accused Valle of siding with the faction responsible for their parents' deaths and lamented the betrayal he had faced. Valle felt conflicted. He was angry at Issei for hurting Kuroka, yet he understood that she had provoked him. He wanted to subdue Issei but felt lost in how to proceed. Just then, Surzex decided to intervene, attacking Issei with his move, Ruin of Extinction. Anger flashed across his face, not only for the destruction of his sister's peerage but also for the humiliation Issei had caused him. Issei, already weakened, could not evade the attack, which incapacitated him. Surzex declared that Issei had gone too far, damaging not only his world but also his family. He vowed to eliminate anyone who opposed his ideals. Azazel urged Surzex to stop, reminding him that Issei was the reason for the alliance's creation and expansion. He pointed out that Rias would have faced a grim fate without Issei's actions. Valle expressed his disappointment, feeling betrayed by Surzex for not honoring their agreement to capture Issei instead of seeking his death. He had believed Surzex still held some honor, but now he felt disillusioned. Surzex dismissed their concerns, viewing Issei as a weak enemy who had attacked them. He taunted Valle, reminding him of his rivalry with a dragon who was now gone. He prepared to deliver a devastating blow to Issei. As Surzex unleashed Ruin of Extinction, Issei felt the intense heat sear his body. The attack caused him immense pain, slowly disintegrating his form. Issei screamed as the agony consumed him, his dragonic body only prolonging his suffering. Surzex laughed maniacally, reveling in the torment he inflicted. Issei, despite his pain, managed to spit at Surzex, expressing his disappointment. He had once respected Surzex as a leader and an older brother, but now he saw him as a pathetic excuse for both. He questioned what he had done to deserve such treatment, insisting he had served with honor and had not betrayed anyone, yet here he was, tortured for the sadistic pleasure of someone he once admired. Issei realized he could not confront Surzex in his current state, but he warned that the consequences of actions would soon become clear. With that, he managed to escape by creating a portal to an unknown location just before Surzex could unleash his final attack. Surzex, filled with rage and impatience, had his true nature revealed to Valle and Azazel, who looked upon him with shame and disgust. His voice echoed with fury. Continuing from the previous events, Issei had successfully merged with Trihexa, with both Drake and Trihexa focusing on training him. After a 2-month PRD, Issei not only mastered all of Drake and Trihexa's abilities but also developed new ones, without any inappropriate techniques involved. Now, he was prepared to seek vengeance against the factions. Issei rested after battling the Citri peerage, feeling satisfaction in their defeat. He had taken revenge on them, leading to their complete downfall. He had also gained the absorption line after defeating the Citri pawn, Genshiro Saji. Issei felt content, believing he had shown restraint compared to what he planned for the Gremory peerage and others who had betrayed him. He reflected on his victory, feeling exhilarated by his encounter with Sona Citri, while the others had posed little challenge. Saji had foolishly thought he could match him, failing to land a single blow. Though Issei felt a twinge of nostalgia for Saji, as they had both been pawns, he resolved to show no mercy to the traitors. They would face the consequences of their betrayal. Drake noted that Issei had certainly taught them a lesson and hoped they would be wiser in their next lives. Trihexa expressed disappointment in the others for their weakness, admitting he found some enjoyment in their fear and despair upon realizing Issei was still alive. Vitra chimed in, teasing Trihexa about his sadistic tendencies, while Trihexa retorted that Vitra should not deny his own relief at no longer being a SLV to the Citri family. In a flashback, The Citri peerage had decided to investigate an aura reminiscent of the Red Dragon Emperor. Despite Sona's reservations, Serafal and Surzex convinced her to recruit this new being. They had no idea this would lead to their greatest mistake, one that would cost them dearly. Upon sensing their presence, Issei unleashed a powerful blast, decimating most of the Citri peerage, leaving only Saji, Tsubaki, and Sona alive, with Tsubaki protecting Sona using her sacred gear, Mirror Alice. Saji, though severely burned, stood ready to confront this new threat. Sona, devastated by the loss of her peerage, turned to Saji, concerned for his well-being. Saji insisted he could still fight, while Tsubaki demanded the unknown assailant reveal themselves. From behind the trees, a figure clad in familiar red armor emerged, instantly recognizable as the Red Dragon Emperor. The trio felt a chilling realization wash over them. Issei's voice broke the silence, revealing himself as the once-dead ally they had mourned. His appearance had changed. His hair was now black with red tinges, and his eyes had transformed to a reddish-brown, marked by a scar from Trihex's training. Saji was incredulous, expressing his outrage at Issei for killing their teammates. Sona vowed to avenge her peerage, promising to make Issei pay for his actions. Issei dismissed her threats, revealing that the blast he had used was merely a fraction of his power. He expressed disappointment in Sona's intelligence, feeling let down by her response. Sona ordered Saji to attack Issei, who lunged at him with all his strength. Issei effortlessly sidestepped and struck him with a powerful blow, sending Saji flying. Despite Saji's attempts to retaliate, he found himself outmatched. Issei delivered a series of punishing strikes, leaving Saji unable to move. In a final display of power, Issei summoned Ascalon, inflicting a painful wound on Saji. The memory of this encounter would haunt Saji for days. With a swift motion, Issei sent Saji soaring into the air with a devastating uppercut, leaving him in agony. "How is it that you are this strong? You are even stronger than expected." Issei had been training diligently, unlike others who had been slacking off. Continuing from the previous chapter, Issei had become the Chaos Brigade leader. His presence as a mysterious being shocked everyone, especially the factions that desperately wanted to recruit him due to his overwhelming aura and abilities. Meanwhile, the factions, including Azazel and Odin, gathered to discuss how to deal with the Chaos Brigade after the election of a new and powerful leader. They realized they needed to address this new threat before it was too late. They were aware of how dangerous Issei was, having single-handedly taken down the entire Citri peerage and Rizavim. Surzex expressed gratitude for their presence at the meeting, especially towards Azazel and Odin. Both Azazel and Odin gritted their teeth at the Devil King's statement, knowing what he had done. Surzex had turned his back on someone who had given them a reason to exist, someone who would have sacrificed everything to protect the Alliance. Azazel particularly despised Surzex for the loss of his surrogate son. While he was pleased that Rizavim was gone, he was uncertain about Issei's intentions. Odin, informed by Azazel about the leader's actions, felt a similar anger but kept it in check to maintain relations with the faction leaders. Yasaka had awakened from her coma, relieved that the dragon was dead. Azazel pointed out that the only reason they were present was due to the underlying threat posed by Issei. Odin agreed, and Surzex remained silent, feeling his pride wounded. Yasaka inquired about the plan to identify this being. Odin explained that Issei was taking vengeance on those who had harmed him or his loved ones, starting with Sona and her peerage, and then targeting Rizavim. He noted that Issei had not attacked the scouting party investigating the aftermath. Azazel added that Rizavim had taken Issei's parents from him, just as he had made Vala's childhood a nightmare. Sona had expelled him from school, and her actions had consequences. Serafal, filled with anger, declared her desire for vengeance against Issei, blaming him for her brother's death. Azazel countered that she was responsible for her own fate, having betrayed Issei just as others had. Surzex urged them to stop fighting, emphasizing the need to address the problem at hand. Michael supported him, insisting they needed to act before it was too late. Surzex proposed a plan, stating that he had instructed Rias and her peerage to investigate the Agar's stadium to uncover the identity of the mystery leader. He believed they were strong enough to handle the situation. Azazel warned against sending Rias and her team, recalling the fate of Sona and her peerage when they had been sent to investigate. Surzex remained confident in his sister's abilities, assuring that she could teleport out if things went wrong. Azazel realized that his concerns would be ignored, and he decided it was better for Surzex to learn the hard way about underestimating Issei. Odin and Michael attempted to convince Surzex to reconsider, but their efforts were in vain. Eventually, they gave up and returned home, unaware that Michael was about to receive shocking news. While Michael was away, the Chaos Brigade attacked Heaven, causing chaos and capturing their intended target. The leader of the Chaos Brigade severely wounded Dulio, Michael's Joker, bringing him to the brink of death. Michael was horrified by the sight of fallen angels, with Raphael and Gabriel attempting to heal the injured. Michael asked Gabriel and Raphael what had happened. Gabriel explained that the Chaos Brigade had attacked them a few hours prior, resulting in minimal casualties but achieving their goal of capturing a target. Michael inquired about the identity of the target. Raphael revealed that it was Irina Shidu, one of the few who had injured and mocked Issei, despite being warned not to. Michael realized that this leader was someone close to Issei, and the implications were troubling. He just hoped that his fears were not true. Meanwhile, at the Chaos Brigade headquarters in Agars, Irina found herself strapped to a chair, awakening to the sight of seals preventing her from using her powers or escaping. As she struggled, a familiar voice reached her ears. Issei approached in his red dragon armor, deliberately obscuring his face. He moved closer to the distressed and fearful Irina, who was trying to contain her rage. Irina demanded to know who he was and why she was tied up like this. Issei responded, reminding her that she was their prisoner and that angering the warden was unwise. Irina insisted he show his face, accusing him of cowardice and calling him a cold-blooded killer. Issei, amused by her reaction, decided to reveal himself. As he deactivated his armor, Irina recognized her former childhood friend, Issei Hayu. His appearance had changed. His reddish-black hair and green pupils were a stark contrast to the chestnut hair and brown eyes she remembered. Shock and terror washed over her as she realized not only was he alive, but he was also much stronger than before. She felt a surge of hatred for him, recalling the brutal beating he had given her. Drake, the Welsh dragon, noted her expression with amusement, wishing he had a camera to capture it. Trihexa, another presence within Issei, encouraged the hate to flow through her. Issei greeted Irina, but warned her that her demise would not be painless, as he had an old friend who would take pleasure in torturing her. Irina was incredulous, questioning how he could still be alive. Trihexa, angered by her mention of a certain name, demanded she never speak it again. Issei calmed Trihexa before explaining to Irina that a friend had merged with him, making them one. Drake introduced himself, revealing his identity as the dragon sealed in the boosted gear. He confronted Irina about her past actions, accusing her of toying with Issei's emotions and treating him as a mere tool. Irina struggled to accept this reality, insisting it couldn't be true. Issei confirmed that it was very real, and in a moment of defiance, Irina spat at him. Issei wiped it off and retaliated with a punch that broke a few of her teeth and nearly fractured her jaw. The dragons growled at her, and Issei expressed surprise that she had not yet fallen from grace. Irina cursed him, but Issei dismissed her words, stating he had been to hell and that she would soon experience it as well. He summoned Layden, a fusion of a dragon and a tree, causing Irina to tremble in fear, recognizing him. Layden revealed that he had been revived by Rizavim, and Issei commanded him to finish Irina, ensuring it would be painful. Left alone with Layden, Irina's screams echoed as she endured torment. Her wings were torn from her body, barriers were placed to restrict her breathing, and blood filled her lungs. Eventually, her struggles ceased as the pain overwhelmed her, leading to unconsciousness. Layden, fulfilling his master's command, burned her remains. Issei then turned his attention to the remaining factions, relishing the thought of their impending demise. He and Daihauser discussed their next target, the Yokai faction. Meanwhile, in the Alliance, Irina had been presumed missing for 2 weeks and was declared killed in action. Her parents were devastated, and Zenobia isolated herself in grief over her friend's loss. The alliance was shaken, weakened by the assault, and unable to make progress against the Chaos Brigade, which was growing stronger. Many in the supernatural community began to lose faith in the alliance's ability to stop the chaos. The hero faction, having learned the truth about Issei, decided to distance themselves from the supernatural, opting for neutrality. Michael attempted to persuade Cao Cao to reconsider, but Cao Cao refused, knowing the consequences of losing their sacred gears. At the Chaos Brigade headquarters, Issei prepared for his assault on the yokai faction, enlisting both Leiden and Daihauser for the mission. He anticipated a confrontation with Amaterasu and the other Shinto gods but felt confident with his army at the ready. The next day dawned bright and beautiful, with birds singing and flowers blooming in the peaceful city of Yurikyoto, home to the yokai. They continued their daily routines, unaware of the impending attack. Suddenly, a magical blast shattered the tranquility, destroying Shinto shrines and severely damaging the yokai city. Many low-level yokai perished in the initial explosion, caught completely off guard by the devastation. The high-class yokai, along with the kitsune, decided to keep the young and weak yokai safe while the stronger ones were asked to assist against the invasion. Yasaka instructed her guards to bring all the children to safety, stating that they had been attacked by the Chaos Brigade and that she would hold them off until the children were safe. The guards complied, taking the kids, including Kunu, with them. Kunu was reluctant to leave, but Yasaka wanted to shield her daughter from the truth about what had happened to Issei, fearing it might shake her faith. Once the children were secured, Yasaka called upon all the high-class yokai and the nine-tailed foxes to help repel the invasion of her faction. She attempted to create a sunshower barrier, but it was quickly destroyed by Leiden, the insomniac dragon, as she had rushed the spell. Yasaka confronted Leiden, questioning his presence and how he had survived. Leiden revealed that he had been revived by the Holy Grail and that their leader sought vengeance, eager to meet her. Yasaka defiantly declared that he would never capture her, but a new voice interrupted, revealing itself as Daihauser Belial. He taunted Yasaka, reminding her of her betrayal towards Issei, the one who had saved them from the hero faction. The weight of his words struck Yasaka, as only she and the faction leaders were aware of their treachery. Doubts began to creep in about Surzek's words, and memories of Issei's past brutality haunted her. Yasaka struggled to comprehend Issei's survival, while Daihauser mocked her intelligence. Issei then appeared, greeting her with a chilling familiarity, and Yasaka's tears flowed as she grappled with the reality of his existence. Issei's taunts revealed his intent to show no mercy. Meanwhile, the Chaos Brigade army wreaked havoc, destroying buildings and effortlessly defeating several high-class yokai. Leiden's barriers protected them, while Daihauser showcased his strength, overpowering any yokai who dared to challenge him. Yasaka, witnessing the chaos, resolved to make one final effort to confront Issei. She transformed into her true form, preparing for battle. In response, Issei transformed into a massive blackish-red dragon, his fiery wings instilling fear in the hearts of the yokai. Yasaka was taken aback by his formidable new form. Determined, she harnessed the ley lines to create a concentrated chakra bomb, aiming to vanquish the evil dragon. Issei countered with a powerful attack, nullifying her bomb and causing her some damage. As the battle escalated, Issei lunged at Yasaka, displaying his ferocity. Yasaka struggled to keep up with his speed and strength, ultimately transforming back into her human form, exhausted and injured. Issei followed suit, grabbing her and delivering a series of punishing blows, causing her to cough up blood. He then targeted her foxtails, inflicting pain as he tore them apart one by one. Yasaka screamed in agony, unable to escape the onslaught. Just as Issei prepared to deliver a final blow, a heart-wrenching scream pierced the chaos. Kunu, tears streaming down her face, pleaded with her brother to stop hurting their mother. This moment stirred distant memories within Issei, reminding him of when he had been a beloved figure to the fox child. However, he realized that Kunu was unaware of the truth behind her mother's actions. Yasaka urged Kunu not to listen to Issei, fearing he would turn her against her. Issei then offered to show Kunu the truth of her mother's betrayal, revealing memories of the pain and suffering he had endured at the hands of those he once trusted. Kunu felt a surge of anger towards her mother for what she had done to her savior. Yasaka recognized that her daughter had come to understand the gravity of her actions. Kunu confronted her mother, her voice trembling with suppressed fury, demanding the truth. Yasaka denied the accusations, but Kunu, unable to contain her emotions, called her mother a liar. As the story continued, Issei Hayadu's identity as the enigmatic leader of the Cows Brigade was revealed to the Valley team. They proceeded to inform Azazel and Asia, the latter having just awakened from her coma. Asia was devastated, mourning the loss of her first friend and foster brother, who had now turned to darkness. Azazel was consumed by despair, feeling responsible for not being there for Issei when he needed support the most. He blamed himself for not protecting him from the path of vengeance he had chosen. At the Grigori headquarters, Azazel questioned Valley about the situation, confirming the troubling news. Valley reassured him that Issei had admitted to his actions but did not harbor hatred towards them. Instead, he warned that Issei would defeat anyone who stood in his way. Azazel, struggling to maintain his composure, lamented the rapid decline of their circumstances and his failure to be there for Issei. Valley tried to comfort him, suggesting that if he had not weakened Issei, they might have been able to bring him back. Both Azazel and Valley were grappling with their grief, realizing that their son and brother had become the very thing he had once vowed to destroy. Unbeknownst to them, Asia was listening in, her heart breaking at the revelation. When she confronted them, they were startled, especially Valley, who was surprised to see her awake. Azazel confirmed the painful truth, and Asia was overwhelmed with sorrow, contemplating the loss of her friend and brother, who had always been her support. Valley asked what their next steps should be, and Azazel explained that the other leaders would soon learn about Yasaka's fate and Issei's identity as the Cows Brigade leader. He excused himself, barely holding back his tears, and retreated to his private quarters, where he turned to drinking, a habit he had developed since Issei's presumed death. Now, with Issei alive as his adversary, he wept for the choices that had led them to this point. At the Cows Brigade headquarters, Issei decided to reveal himself to the assembled factions of Clippeth and Nilrame. The members were taken aback, never expecting the one they had seen as a beacon of hope to become their strongest ally. Issei addressed them, acknowledging that he had hidden his true self and that many were dissatisfied with the alliance's actions. He shared his disillusionment with the factions, explaining how they prioritized strength over compassion, disregarding the weak. He recounted his own experience of being treated as a tool rather than a valued member. Issei declared that it was time to stand against the injustice and protect the weak. His speech resonated with the armies, who cheered in support. He announced their plan to launch a final assault against the Devil faction by sundown the following day, urging everyone to rest and prepare for battle. Drake, Vitra, and Trihexa expressed their admiration for Issei's leadership and the way he treated them as equals rather than mere tools. Issei felt a swell of joy, grateful for their support as he anticipated the challenges ahead. His thoughts were interrupted by the arrival of Leiden, Diehauser, and Kunu, who praised him for his inspiring speech. Diehauser expressed his newfound strength and confidence, while Leiden acknowledged Issei's kindness in seeing beyond his dragon nature. Kunu, initially skeptical of Issei's actions, now understood the reasons behind them and recognized the truth of his struggles. Issei reflected on the unwavering support of his true friends, feeling emotional as he realized they would lay down their lives for him, just as he would for them. Drake acknowledged that Issei deserved this moment of connection, while Trihexa noted that after everything Issei had endured, he needed love and affection from those close to him. With a determined heart, Issei wiped away his tears and gently patted Kunu on the head. In this dark alternate take on the first arc of High School DXD, Issei makes a surprising bargain with Rainier to save Asia Argento from being taken. This unexpected decision leads to Issei being kidnapped, leaving Asia in shock as she watches her friend being taken away. Issei pleads with Rainier not to harm Asia, offering himself in exchange. Rainier, intrigued by Issei's determination, accepts his deal, taking him into the skies. As Issei is carried away, his initial excitement fades, replaced by a mix of defiance and sadness as he realizes the gravity of his situation. Asia, horrified, understands that she must act quickly. Determined to rescue Issei, Asia rushes to the occult research club, where Rias Gremory, Issei's master, is enjoying tea with her queen and servant, Akeno Himejima. Asia bursts into the room, startling Rias. Although Rias is initially skeptical about a nun being in a place filled with devils, her expression changes when Asia informs her of Issei's kidnapping. Despite her frustration with Issei for disobeying her orders, Rias knows she must act swiftly to save him. Asia urges Rias to help Issei, emphasizing that he needs her. Rias, controlling her anger, agrees to rescue him but warns that Issei will face consequences for his reckless actions. Asia pleads for Issei's safety, and Rias reassures her that he will be protected. The story continues with Rias and Akeno confronting Kalwerner, Donasik, and Mitlet, while Koneko and Kiba take a different approach. Asia joins Koneko and Kiba as they encounter Freed, who taunts them. Asia begs Freed to let them save Issei, but he accuses her of being corrupted by her association with devils. Freed attacks, but Kiba skillfully parries his blows, while Koneko delivers swift punches. Freed, frustrated by their resilience, resorts to using his sword of light, only to be countered by Kiba's sword of darkness. Kiba explains that his sword consumes light energy, and Freed realizes he is at a disadvantage. In a desperate attempt to escape, Freed creates a flash of light, allowing him to flee before facing defeat at the hands of the devils. Meanwhile, outside the church, Akeno sets up a barrier to contain the fallen angels. Dressed in her Miko costume, she and Rias confront the angels, who mock their boldness. Akeno reveals that two of Rias's servants, along with Asia, have infiltrated the church and are dealing with the priests. The fallen angels realize they have been outmaneuvered and attempt to escape, but Akeno assures them that the barrier is strong enough to prevent their exit. Rias, fueled by anger over the fallen angels' taunts about Issei, prepares to unleash her power, determined to protect her pawn and confront the threat posed by Rainier and her allies. Make peace with your maker. Rias was furious, vowing to make those who had harmed her pawn pay dearly. With determination, she utilized her POD to swiftly eliminate the three fallen angels, breaking the barrier that had held her back and allowing her to rush to aid her team and the nun. Continuing from the previous chapter, Asia Argento had established a mental connection with the Welsh dragon, Drake. One night, she found herself in a fiery landscape, where a massive dragon loomed over her. Initially terrified, she soon recognized him as Drake, the Red Dragon Emperor. Drake greeted her warmly, introducing himself and reassuring her that he meant no harm, as she was his current host. Asia hesitated, revealing that she was not Drake's original host. This revelation shocked Drake, who pressed her for more information. With sadness in her voice, Asia explained that her friend, Issei Hayato, had been the previous host. He was a reincarnated devil, a pawn of Rias Gremory, who had been killed by the fallen angel Rainier when she extracted the boosted gear from his body. Asia continued, sharing the painful truth that Issei had been tortured and mocked by Rainier after his demise. Drake felt a surge of anger upon hearing this. Though he had not known Issei, he could sense the depth of pain in Asia's words and realized that Issei would have made a great host. Roaring in anguish, Drake lamented his inability to intervene, sealed within the gear. He cursed his situation, reflecting on how he had transformed from a prideful dragon into a more compassionate being due to his bond with Asia. Despite her anger, Asia expressed her determination to avenge Issei's death. She had confronted Rainier and made her pay for her actions. Vowing to become stronger, Asia declared that she would no longer be the weak nun who allowed Issei to die. She would protect any sacred gear user from being abused by the supernatural, dedicating her life to this cause. She pleaded for Drake's help in her quest for strength. Surprised by Asia's sincerity, Drake recognized her as the first host who saw him as a being rather than a mere tool. He felt a deep connection with her determination and agreed to aid her in her quest. He promised to be her partner until the very end, vowing to prevent what happened to Issei from happening to anyone else. Grateful and tearful, Asia thanked Drake and asked how they should begin their journey to strength. Drake proposed that he could transform her into a dragon, enhancing her abilities beyond those of a regular human, angel, devil, or fallen angel. She would gain dragon-like features, high magical abilities, and resistance to poison, with only Samuel's poison posing a threat to her. With newfound hope, Asia prepared to embark on her path to strength alongside Drake. But be warned, this process will be extremely painful. Are you sure you are up to the task, partner? Asia shuddered at the thought of pain, recalling the suffering Issei endured because of her. With a determined look, she accepted the challenge. She felt ready to begin the transformation. Drake encouraged her, stating that it was time to start. Asia woke from her dream, realizing it was more than just a dream. She was surprised to hear Drake's voice outside the mindscape. Drake explained that he could communicate with her through the boosted gear whenever she called his name, but he asked her not to disturb him when he was resting. Asia chuckled at Drake's playful tone. Drake inquired about their plan for the procedure. Asia mentioned a secluded location where they could safely hide without any supernatural interference. Drake agreed, and they set off to the jungle, where they would not be disturbed. Drake could easily conceal their presence from any supernatural beings, allowing the procedure to proceed without interruption. Drake complimented Asia on her choice of location, and she thanked him. He informed her that the procedure would take a week to complete. Asia felt a sense of urgency, knowing they had nothing to lose, and they decided to begin. Continuing from their previous adventure, Asia made her way to Issei's house. She contemplated visiting Issei's parents to inform them of his disappearance. Although she feared they might not believe her, she felt it was important for them to know. Little did she realize that supernatural forces had already erased Issei from their memories. Drake expressed concern, suggesting that they might not believe her since she had never met them. Asia insisted that they must have filed a missing persons report after Issei had been gone for 2 months. Drake acknowledged her point but reminded her that many people did not believe in the supernatural. With resolve, Asia rang the doorbell and was greeted by an elderly woman, Ms. Hai, Issei's mother. Confused by Asia's presence, Ms. Hayadu allowed her inside, sensing no ill intent. Asia introduced herself and got straight to the point, mentioning Issei's disappearance. Ms. Hayadu's response shocked Asia. She claimed not to have a son. Asia was taken aback, struggling to comprehend the situation. Ms. Hayadu insisted that Asia had the wrong person. Drake sensed magic surrounding them, indicating that their memories had been wiped clean. Asia wondered who would want them to forget their own son. Drake speculated that Rias Gremory was responsible, suggesting that she had erased their memories due to her own guilt. Asia felt a surge of anger at the thought of Rias's cruelty. Realizing it was best to leave before the devils sensed her presence, she composed herself. Apologizing for the misunderstanding, Asia thanked Ms. Hayadu for her hospitality and made her exit. As she walked away, she felt determined to confront Rias and her peerage about what they had done to the Hayadu family. She needed answers. Arriving at Kuo Academy, Asia was met with unwelcome attention from Issei's friends, who were now acting inappropriately. Disgusted by their hypocrisy, she pressed them for information about Issei, only to discover that they too had been affected by Rias's memory manipulation. Finally, Asia arrived at the Occult Research Club, where she found Rias in a weakened state. The prideful princess of Kuo appeared exhausted, with dark circles under her eyes and disheveled makeup. Asia realized that Rias had suffered greatly, and she felt a mix of anger and concern as she confronted her about the situation. The negligence had taken a massive toll on her. Asia felt a wave of pity as she looked at Rias, who was weak and frail. The kind-hearted nun that Asia once knew was still there, but now she was just a shadow of her former self. Asia wanted to console Rias and help her with her problems, but she couldn't shake the memory of what she had done to Issei's parents. She needed answers. Asia asked what Rias had done to Issei's parents, questioning why they couldn't remember anything about their son. Rias hesitated before beginning to explain, but Asia's frustration boiled over, and she demanded an answer. Rias, taken aback by Asia's outburst, was not in a position to fight back. She revealed that she had wiped their memories to protect Issei from further disgrace. She couldn't bear the thought of him being mocked or ridiculed for his parents' deaths. Asia wanted to argue that they deserved to know the truth about their son, but she understood Rias's reasoning. She had seen how cruel the school could be toward Issei, and while she felt that his parents should know, she recognized the difficult position Rias was in. As Rias's condition became clearer, Asia noticed her lack of makeup, dark circles under her eyes, and messy hair. It was evident that something far worse had happened to the occult research club while she had been away. Just the guilt of Issei's death couldn't account for this transformation. Akeno, Rias's queen, entered the scene, looking equally worn down. Asia listened patiently as Akeno explained Rias's engagement to Riser. She described Riser's treatment of Rias, treating her like a trophy rather than a person. Asia felt disturbed and angry at the thought of someone being toyed with, but she also recognized that Rias was responsible for her own fate. Continuing from their previous encounter, Asia was now dealing with the aftermath of God's demise alongside her friends, Zenobia and Irina. The revelation had left them all in shock. They had once believed in the church, but now they were questioning everything they had been taught. Irina expressed her despair over the situation, while Zenobia lamented the lies they had been fed. Asia, though not as affected as her friends, felt the weight of the truth. She had lost her faith long ago, realizing that she had to rely on herself during her battles. In her room, Asia spoke with Drake, her dragon partner, about God's demise. Drake expressed his surprise and relief, explaining that he had always known that God was not the strongest being. They discussed the existence of beings far more powerful than God, and Drake reminded Asia that destruction often precedes creation. Before they could rest, a red circle appeared, and a devil emerged. Asia prepared to defend herself, but the figure introduced himself as Surzek's Lucifer, Rias's older brother. He assured her that he meant no harm and was there for a different purpose. He expressed gratitude for Asia's actions, noting that thanks to her, nothing had happened to Rias or her peerage, and no war had erupted between the factions. The Excaliburs were returned to the angels thanks to the actions of Asia and her friends, preventing a war and ensuring that the warmonger received his due consequences. Asia felt a deep sorrow as she reflected on Issei's death, believing she was to blame for not being strong enough to protect him. Tears streamed down her face as the memories overwhelmed her. Surzek, though mentally strong, felt a pang of guilt. He understood that it was Asia's sister's actions that had led to Issei's demise, and he felt partly responsible as well. Drake, sensing the tension, urged Surzek to act. Unable to contain himself, Surzek embraced Asia, who was weeping uncontrollably. She found solace in his presence, a comfort she had not felt in a long time. Surzek encouraged her to express her grief, knowing that bottling it up would only worsen her pain. As Asia cried, she clung to the hope that someone could help her heal. After a while, Asia dried her tears and apologized for ruining Surzek's attire. He reassured her, sharing that he understood the pain of loss. After giving her a moment to compose herself, he revealed the true purpose of his visit. Surzek explained that he wanted to invite her to a peace conference between the factions, emphasizing her importance as the one who had defeated Kokobile. Asia questioned her role in the event, but Surzek explained that they sought an alliance to prevent further casualties in the upcoming conflict and to protect sacred gear users from supernatural threats. Realizing that attending the conference aligned with a promise she made to Issei, Asia felt a renewed sense of purpose. She understood that if the conference succeeded, it could lead to lasting peace and prevent further loss of life. Determined, she agreed to join Surzek. Surzek informed her that the conference would take place at Kuo Academy, and Asia confirmed she would arrive on time. With gratitude, Surzek teleported away to prepare for the event, unaware that it might lead to unforeseen challenges. On her way to the school, Asia encountered a familiar yet unknown figure. Drake warned her to be cautious, identifying the individual as the White Dragon Emperor. The figure greeted her as a rival, and Asia recognized him as Valle, the wielder of the White Dragon Emperor. She knew he was strong, having already unlocked his balance breaker. Valle approached her, acknowledging her strength in defeating Kokobile and suggesting a friendly test of strength. Asia was taken aback, questioning the timing of their match during a peace conference. Valley assured her that they would have their fight later, leaving her intrigued yet apprehensive about their future encounter. As Valley teleported away, Asia contemplated her training for the inevitable showdown. Her thoughts were interrupted by the arrival of Zenobia and Irina, who confirmed they had found the meeting location. Eager to get to the conference, Asia mentioned she had a personal question for Azazel, the Governor General of the Fallen Angels. The trio made their way to the school, feeling the weight of the stares from the male students. Asia sighed, trying to reassure her friends that they would eventually get used to it, while Zenobia and Irina expressed their discomfort with the attention. They knew they needed to focus on the task ahead, determined to contribute to the alliance and the hope for peace. They humiliated and mocked Asia's friend due to his peculiar interests, yet they themselves were far more questionable in their behavior. Asia agreed with Irina as they headed toward the conference room. Inside, they saw Azazel, Michael, the head of the angels, Surzex, and Seraphol, another devil king. Asia noticed that Rias looked much better than during her last visit, likely due to her recovery from the recent conflict. Surzex welcomed Asia and her friends with a smile as they entered the hall, signaling that the meeting was about to begin. He declared that the peace meeting would commence. Michael explained that the chaos stemmed from Kokabil, the fallen angel leader, suggesting that Azazel should take responsibility for the situation. Azazel acknowledged the mess, admitting that Kokabil had been a rogue subordinate. He preferred to focus on researching sacred gears rather than engaging in war, but Kokabil's disagreement with his stance led to his rebellion. Azazel's nonchalant attitude raised skepticism in Michael, while Surzex sighed at Azazel's apparent lack of concern for the consequences. Asia observed Azazel's carelessness and questioned his suitability as a leader. She wanted to inquire about the fallen angels' actions, as they had caused significant harm to the human population, and also about the excommunication of Irina and Zenobia. Seraphol urged everyone to stop blaming each other and to pursue peace, expressing her desire to return home for her magical girl shoot. Surzex and Michael both declared their support for peace, and Azazel joined in, leading to the signing of the peace treaty. Azazel then asked the emperors for their thoughts on the matter. Valley expressed his indifference, stating he only sought strong opponents. Asia shared her dream of protecting sacred gear wielders from supernatural threats and affirmed her support for the peace treaty, as long as it respected the choices of humans. With the peace treaty established, Asia decided it was time to voice her concerns. She directed her question to Azazel, asking why he had not intervened to prevent the execution of innocent humans due to their sacred gears, which had led to Issei's death at the hands of Rainier. Azazel understood her meaning and felt responsible for not stopping Kokabil in time. Rias, reminded of Issei's demise, felt a wave of sadness wash over her, wishing to befriend Asia for some inner peace. Azazel admitted his fault, acknowledging that he should have acted sooner. He expressed gratitude to Asia for her efforts to stop the chaos, bowing to her in appreciation. Asia was taken aback by his gesture, realizing the significance of his gratitude. She then turned to Michael with her next question regarding the excommunication of Irina and Zenobia. Michael explained that he wanted to keep the news of God's demise a secret to avoid chaos, as the angel population had been dwindling due to a lack of believers. To protect the church's beliefs, they decided to excommunicate those who posed a threat. With that, Surzex concluded the meeting, and it was agreed that the factions would support each other in rebuilding. The devils would share their technology, the fallen angels would provide research on sacred gears, and the angels would offer healing facilities. They decided to only consider those genuinely interested in joining the factions and to refrain from hunting sacred gear wielders unless they posed a real threat. Just as Surzex was about to continue, time suddenly stopped for everyone except the leaders, Zenobia, Irina, Valley, and Asia. Azazel noted that the vampire boy had been kidnapped. Surzex asked Asia for her help in retrieving Gasper, as it was crucial for their next move. Valley expressed his boredom and, upon Azazel's suggestion, left to create distractions among their enemies. With Valley causing complications, Asia seized the opportunity to infiltrate the ORC HQ and rescue Gasper from the Nilray magicians. The situation mirrored events from Season 3, with Asia taking the lead in the rescue while Azazel faced Kateria Leviathan, ultimately using his powerful balance breaker to defeat the old Satan faction general. By the time Gasper was rescued from the magicians, time had reverted back to normal. Azazel relaxed after his fight with Kateria when he was suddenly attacked by Valle, who easily knocked him to the ground. Azazel acknowledged his age, remarking that he must be getting old to actually get hit. Valle explained that he found this side interesting and decided to join them. Asia expressed her disappointment, realizing this was Valle's big surprise. She warned him that it was a bad move to join the opposing side. With that, Asia engaged Valle in their inevitable fight. Although Valle had the upper hand due to his training, Asia was a being far stronger than he had ever faced. Her dragon physiology allowed her to keep up with Valle and even damage him with her own attacks. Azazel mentioned that he had been hearing about a new organization against the peace in the Alliance, known as the Cows Brigade. Valle confirmed this, stating that unlike them, he was not interested in world domination or destruction. He only wanted to fight strong beings. He introduced himself as Valle Lucifer, the son of the devil Lucifer and a human mother. Valle revealed his 8 wings, shocking everyone present in the Alliance, especially Surzex, who was unaware that a descendant of Lucifer existed. He realized this revelation would cause a huge uproar in the devil community and decided to keep it a secret. Valle then disclosed that the leader of the Cows Brigade was Ophis, the Ouroboros dragon, leaving Asia and Rias in disbelief. Asia questioned whether they would continue fighting or if Valle would boast about his heritage, which he seemed eager to do. Valle insisted that Asia had no idea what he had been through, but she was ready to fight. The two resumed their battle, exchanging punches, kicks, and magical powers. Asia had never enjoyed a fight against someone nearly equal to her power, and Valle was having the time of his life. Even the dragons watching were entertained, having grown bored with predictable outcomes. However, Valle made a mistake by pushing Asia too far. He taunted her about her past as a weak nun before becoming the Red Dragon Emperor, even mentioning her failure to save a friend from a fallen angel. Asia, angered by his words, lunged at Valle, overwhelming him with powerful punches and kicks that broke his balance and caused him injury. Albion, concerned for his host, watched as Valle coughed up blood, realizing he had underestimated Asia's strength. Valle acknowledged her power and decided to use his Juggernaut drive. He began to awaken, declaring himself the heavenly dragon who had taken the principles of supremacy from God. He expressed his envy for the infinite, and his pursuit of the dream, vowing to become the white dragon of supremacy and take Asia to the limits of white paradise. Valle was enveloped in a powerful transformation known as the Juggernaut drive, a state that granted him immense strength but threatened to consume his consciousness. He felt a surge of power coursing through him, and he turned to his rival, eager to demonstrate his capabilities. Asia, sensing the danger, urged him not to proceed, but Valle unleashed a concentrated blast of energy toward the Gremory peerage. In an instant, the attack obliterated them, leaving everyone in shock at the devastating display of power. Surzex, Graphia, and Sona watched in horror as their sister and friend were lost in the chaos. Surzex felt a deep agony, mourning the loss of his only sister. As the Juggernaut drive began to take over Valle, he transformed into a mindless beast. Azazel and Asia were filled with rage, realizing that Valle had succumbed to the beast within him. Asia resolved to confront Valle, determined to put an end to the threat he posed. Meanwhile, Surzex and Graphia grieved for Rias, struggling to comprehend the loss. Sona and Riser shared their sorrow, tears streaming down their faces as they mourned their best friend and fiancé. In the midst of the turmoil, Asia engaged Valle in battle, using her draconic flames and super strength to relentlessly attack him. Drag, her dragon partner, amplified her abilities, allowing her to inflict significant damage on Valle. The mindless beast struggled to defend itself against the onslaught, and it became clear that he was beginning to falter. Hovering above Asia, Valle regained a flicker of consciousness and realized the devastation around him. Asia declared that he was too dangerous to remain alive. In a decisive moment, Asia tore the divine dividing from Valle's body, causing him to scream in pain. Blood flowed from the wound, and she attempted to integrate the sacred gear into herself. Drake warned her against this, explaining that their opposing natures made it impossible for them to coexist in one body. However, Issei was determined to try. As she incorporated the gear, she experienced excruciating pain, far beyond anything she had faced before. Drake watched with concern, knowing that Issei's willpower was strong, but he feared for her life. After enduring the agony, Issei succeeded in merging the gear with her body. She emerged transformed, now possessing wings reminiscent of the divine dividing. In that moment, she became both the Red Dragon and the White Dragon Emperor, a powerful fusion of two dragons within one being. Drake roared with laughter, celebrating her achievement and teasing that Albion would be shocked by her newfound strength. Vale, bewildered, questioned how she had managed to host two sacred gears. Issei confidently replied that her pain tolerance and determination allowed her to overcome any obstacle. Fueled by her anger at Vale's actions, she began to punish him for the destruction he had caused. Just as she prepared to finish him off with a fire blast, a man with a staff intervened. The newcomer introduced himself as Biko, a descendant of Sun Wukong, and explained that he had orders to take Vale with him. Issei demanded to know why he had interrupted their fight. Biko humorously noted the irony of the situation, pointing out Vale's weakened state. Vale, frustrated, urged Biko to leave with him. With that, Vale and Biko teleported away, leaving Issei in stunned silence. The hybrid dragon empress realized the cost of the alliance meeting had been immense. Rias and her team were gone, and the weight of their loss hung heavily on Surzex, who would return to the Gremory mansion to inform his parents of the tragedy. Grafia, devastated, struggled to maintain her composure as everyone else processed the shock of the events that had unfolded. Issei then met up with Zenobia and Irina, who had declined Michael's offer to rejoin the church. Issei expressed her disbelief at the recent events, while Irina shared her feelings about Rias's death, noting that although she wasn't particularly close to Rias, she felt sympathy for her brother, who didn't deserve such a tragedy. Zenobia agreed with Irina, acknowledging that Rias did not deserve such a terrible fate. Issei suggested they call it a day and head home to gather themselves, aware that a terrorist group was out there, threatening the factions. Both Zenobia and Irina concurred that rest was necessary, and together, the trio made their way home. Continuing from the previous events, Asia Argento was grappling with the aftermath of the disastrous faction meeting. Despite the peace treaty being signed, Rias Gremory and her peerage had been wiped out by Valley Lucifer, who had turned against them. Although the devils were somewhat calmed by the fact that a Gregory member had become a terrorist, the situation remained dire. At the Gremory mansion, a funeral was held for Rias Gremory, the former matriarch of the Gremory family. The atmosphere was somber, with the entire Gremory family present, along with the Citri family, the Phoenix family, and several others, including Michael, Gabriel, Asia, Zenobia, and Irina. The women of the Gremory family mourned silently for their lost daughter and sister-in-law. Both Baraquil and Surzex were present, grieving for their beloved family member. With a heavy heart, Zeracidus Gremory, the current patriarch of the Gremory household, delivered a speech. Zeracidus thanked everyone for attending the funeral and spoke of the loss of 4 innocent souls, taken by the terrorist known as Valley Lucifer. He emphasized that Rias was a kind-hearted woman who only wished for the happiness and safety of her peerage and territory. She had sought to make amends for her past mistakes, and her selflessness was evident to all. Several members of the Gremory and Citri families, including Riser Phoenix, shared kind words about Rias, surprising everyone with Riser's transformation during his time with her. He had changed not only for her but also began treating his servants and lower-class devils with respect and care, earning the pride of his parents. A few moments later, Surzex stood on a balcony, gazing at the stars, tears streaming down his face. He had lost his sister, someone he had cherished deeply. Though his position as a leader allowed him to control his emotions to some extent, he could no longer hold back his grief. Azazel approached him to talk, prompting Surzex to quickly wipe away his tears. Their relationship had become strained due to Rias's demise, but Surzex knew it wasn't Azazel's fault. He maintained his distance to avoid causing further pain. Surzex, masking his anger, asked Azazel what he wanted. Azazel clarified that he was not there to discuss the alliance. Surzex demanded to know the purpose of Azazel's visit, and Azazel, taken aback by the outburst, remained silent, knowing he had failed as a father to Valley, which had led to Rias's death. Azazel then revealed that he would accept any punishment Surzex deemed appropriate for Valley. Surzex expressed his desire for Valley to be dead, to which Azazel responded that it was uncertain if Valley was still alive. He explained that Valley had suffered greatly after losing his sacred gear, which had been integrated into Asia's body, leaving him in a near-death state. Surzex, filled with dread, realized the implications of Asia's newfound strength. Azazel worried that with both Drake and Albia now by her side, Asia was no longer someone to be taken lightly. Surzex acknowledged that despite the circumstances, Asia remained an ally, and they should avoid provoking her unless absolutely necessary, especially if they wished to strengthen their alliance with all mythological factions. Both Azazel and Surzex resolved to bring the Norse faction into their alliance, recognizing the need for unity against the threat posed by the Cow's Brigade, lest they suffer the same fate as Rias Gremory. Meanwhile, in a different dimension, a group of 4 individuals struggled to tend to a wounded boy with silver hair. Valley Lucifer, the Grigori member turned terrorist and the one responsible for Rias Gremory's death. He was gravely injured, having lost a significant amount of blood from his battle with the Red Dragon Emperor. The loss of a sacred gear typically signified death, and the situation was dire. Valley lay on the ground, barely conscious from the significant blood loss he had suffered. Biko expressed his concern, urging Kuroka and Lu Fei to find a solution. Kuroka, filled with worry, explained that her senjutsu abilities were ineffective against Valley's condition. She couldn't restore his life force or heal his wounds. Lu Fei added that even her healing spells were failing. The Red Dragon Emperor had proven to be formidable, not only defeating Valley in his juggernaut drive but also managing to take away his sacred gear and integrate it into his own body. Kuroka, anxious, voiced her desire to see Valley alive, while a voice called out for updates. Lu Fei responded to Arthur, Valley's older brother, that nothing significant had changed. Valley, barely awake, resigned himself to his fate, stating that his death was inevitable. He had sustained too much damage and lost his sacred gear due to the attacks he endured. Even if he survived, he believed the Juggernaut had drastically shortened his lifespan, leaving him with little time left. He urged his friends to accept the reality of the situation. Arthur, filled with frustration, implored Valley not to give up hope. Kuroka echoed his sentiment, insisting that Valley could not die, not like this. Chapter End. This narrative explores the concept of dark universes, contrasting them with alternate realities where characters may embody different traits. The events familiar to fans from the light novels, manga, and anime primarily unfold in the realm of Draconic Deus, referred to as Earth. However, Season 3 diverges significantly from the light novels, taking place in an alternate reality where the children of Issei Haidu and his companions travel back in time to restore reality, as future Loki attempts to alter it. These children originate from a futuristic reality, a different Earth altogether. In these alternate Earths, the heroes may have drastically different pasts, leading to variations in their attitudes and personalities. For instance, in one reality, Issei Haidu could remain kind-hearted instead of becoming a pervert, while in another he might align with the Cow's Brigade. Similarly, Rias Gremory could be a harsh and vindictive master to her servants in a different universe. Such alternate versions of beloved characters are entirely plausible. The characters mentioned exist within a positive multiverse, where hope prevails and often leads to happy endings. In contrast, a negative or dark multiverse exists, where misfortune reigns and the main characters face bleak circumstances. This results in twisted versions of familiar characters as seen in previous stories, where Issei and Asia become distorted reflections of their canon selves, Issei as a vengeful figure and Asia as a tyrant. The dark universes serve as a mirror, reflecting what characters could have become under extreme circumstances. They reveal deep-seated fears, illustrating what these characters might have faced. Issei, for example, fears a false sense of security, worrying that the girls are merely teasing him or that he will be rejected, ultimately ruining his relationships. He overcomes these fears through the support of those he once feared losing. Similarly, Asia fears losing Issei, who becomes her emotional anchor. When he is presumed dead, she contemplates despair but ultimately finds strength when he returns, more powerful than before. These fears are integral to the existence of Dark Multiverse characters. This narrative serves as a prologue to events occurring 500 years before the anime, revealing aspects not yet covered in the high school DXD series. In this dark alternate take on the prologue arc, Surzek's Lucifer searches for his choir amidst an attack by the devil government on the resistance led by the Agares and Baal factions. He rushes into what was once a choir area, now reduced to ashes. Mortified by the sight of lifeless bodies strewn about, he realizes the devastation is the result of government actions. Gripping one of the child's hands, he feels a surge of fury at their tragic fate. Chapter End. Since they had not yet become devil kings, Surzek found himself in disbelief. He could not comprehend how the situation had escalated. They only wanted to sing a song of peace, not war. Just then, a silver-haired lady appeared, Graphia Lucifage, the right-hand lady of the House of Lucifer. Graphia stammered, unsure of what to say. Surzek expressed his frustration, lamenting that they did not deserve this fate. They were merely children who wished to share their talent with the underworld, not to engage in conflict. Graphia observed the transformation in Surzek, who had once been a gentle soul. Now, he stood filled with anger and despair, and she realized he would not let this injustice go unchallenged. With a fierce determination, Surzek declared that those responsible would pay for their actions. Graphia recognized that confronting him in this state would be futile. She needed to understand why such a heinous act had occurred, so she left to try to restrain the resistance troops before they could inflict further damage. After a while, Surzek's friends Serafal, Ajuka, and Falbium arrived. They were taken aback by the devastation around them and immediately offered their support to Surzek in his time of loss. They understood that the government would have to answer for their crimes against these innocent devils. Blood would surely be shed, and they resolved to stand with Surzek against those who had acted so cruelly. Surzek suggested they accept Zekrum's offer to fight against the government. Ajuka raised a concern, questioning whether that would make them targets of the devil government. Surzek acknowledged the risk but insisted that they could not allow such a genocide to go unchallenged. He pointed out the suffering around them, emphasizing that the innocent deserve to live happy lives, free from fear. The government's actions showed a blatant disregard for consequences, and he vowed to bring about change no matter the cost. Falbium, stifling a yawn, suggested they head toward the government's base. Serafal agreed, and the four devils resolved to assist Zekrum and the Duke of Agars in their mission to prevent further injustices and create a better society for all devils. They sensed that challenges lay ahead, particularly for Surzek's Gremory. As Surzek walked through the streets, he suddenly heard a commotion. A man was attempting to gather a crowd, announcing that an execution would take place for a traitor who had defied the Satans. Surzek rolled his eyes, knowing that such executions were commonplace due to the ongoing conflict with the resistance. Nevertheless, he decided to investigate further. In the capital city of Lucifad, Surzek spotted a woman in the distance, chained to a pike on a pedestal with the word, "traitor," displayed prominently. The crowd was stunned to see her in such a dire condition. She had been one of the most loyal supporters of the government, and many could not fathom how she had come to be in this situation. Surzek felt a wave of shock and horror wash over him as he recognized the woman he loved, now a victim of the government's cruelty. Graphia Lucifage, once the right-hand lady, was now publicly condemned and unable to defend herself, her spirit seemingly broken by the torment she had endured. She had the look of sadness and betrayal in her eyes, feeling as though her whole world had come crashing down. In a flashback, Graphia walked through the halls of the Lucifage mansion, where her father and brother, Euclid, eagerly awaited her arrival. They were curious about her work, especially Euclid, who simply wanted to see his sister after her duties of watching over Surzek. Euclid greeted her with enthusiasm, expressing how much he had missed her. Lord Lucifage inquired about her well-being, acknowledging the challenges of her job. Graphia replied that she was fine but admitted it could be tiring, especially with the burden of watching over Surzex, a good man who only wanted the best for his people. However, today had been particularly difficult for him, as he was in despair over the loss of his choir at the hands of the government. Lord Lucifage expressed his regret for supporting the government, given their recent actions, and admitted feeling lost about what to do next. Graphia echoed his uncertainty, while Euclid reminded them of their loyalty to the Lucifer and the other satanic clans, as part of the 6 houses of Lucifer. Lord Lucifage sighed, acknowledging his son's point but lamenting their lack of choices in the current situation. Suddenly, a messenger arrived, requesting Graphia's presence at a meeting called by Rias. As she headed to the meeting, she was unexpectedly handcuffed and brought to trial, where she faced accusations of betrayal. Rias had framed her for failing to inform the Satans about Surzex's whereabouts, despite her efforts to keep an eye on him due to their fears of his power. Graphia questioned Rias about the accusations, insisting that she had reported everything about Surzex. However, Rias dismissed her pleas, claiming she had failed in her duties. She was subjected to harsh treatment, unable to defend herself as magic was used against her. Despite her attempts to use her ice powers, she was overpowered by Rias and the combined Satans, leaving her powerless and ultimately facing execution. Both Lord Lucifage and Euclid were in disbelief, suspecting that Surzex was behind the accusations against Graphia. Discussions among the Satans led to the decision to execute her, with some arguing that her presence was a threat to their authority. Graphia realized that the trust she had placed in the Satans was misplaced, and her fate felt sealed. She had lost faith in the government she once served. As the flashback ended, Surzex silently cried out for Graphia. A devil announced her execution, labeling her a traitor for not complying with orders against the rebels. The torture continued, and Graphia screamed in pain as magic was used against her, damaging her skin. Surzex, unable to watch, felt tears welling in his eyes as he witnessed the woman he loved suffering. She was unable to defend herself against the relentless assault, and those present could only watch in horror. After what felt like an eternity, Graphia became limp, unable to endure any more. Surzex felt as if time had stopped, trapped in a moment where he could only see Graphia pleading for help. He was powerless against the Satans, especially with Rias aiding them. The shadows of despair loomed over him, mocking his inability to protect her. In the aftermath of the execution, everyone returned home, fearful of the consequences they might face for opposing the government or joining the resistance. Only one person remained, Surzex Gremory. He watched as everyone else walked away, indifferent to the world around them. Surzex rushed to Graphia, who was barely breathing. As she opened her eyes, she saw Surzex crying, tears streaming down his face. She felt a deep sadness, realizing he was the only one who genuinely cared for her, while others, including her parents, had not even come to her side during her execution. With a trembling voice, Surzex pleaded with her, expressing his desperation. He could not bear the thought of losing her. Graphia, struggling to speak, urged him not to cry, reminding him that he was supposed to be smiling. Surzex insisted that she should not speak and promised to find a way to save her, asking her to believe in him. Graphia, with great difficulty, told him that she did not have much time left and asked him to look after her family for her. Surzex, overwhelmed with emotion, begged her not to say such things, insisting there had to be a way to bring her back to health. Graphia apologized, fearing there was nothing he could do for her. He urged her not to lose hope, but she reminded him that she would always love him. In that moment, Graphia succumbed to her injuries, leaving Surzex heartbroken and helpless. He cried out in despair, feeling utterly powerless to save her from her fate. In a low voice, he vowed to protect her family and avenge her, declaring that those responsible would pay for their actions. With a heavy heart, Surzex arranged a proper funeral for his beloved Graphia. This marked the beginning of a vengeful journey, as he realized the depths of the corruption within the government. Initially, he had sought to free the devils from their oppressive rule, but now his desire for revenge burned fiercely. The devil kind were devastated by the news of Graphia's execution, recognizing the extent of the government's corruption. Yet, none were strong enough to oppose it, as the regime had become a force that would execute anyone who dared to defy it. Even the rebellion had become demoralized due to the arbitrary actions of the government. However, not all devils were disheartened, especially the 4 devils with the potential to surpass the current Maos in their prime. They were more determined than ever to join the rebellion and end the tyranny once and for all. Among them was Serafal Citri, who had once been a friend to the now-deceased Graphia. Serafal sought vengeance against the government after uncovering the hidden motives behind their actions. She understood that this was an attempt to undermine Surzex, and she would not forgive them for what they had done, particularly Rizavim, the one who had instigated this chaos. Serafal expressed her sorrow to Surzex, acknowledging her regret for the situation. Surzex remained silent, lost in his grief. Ajuka urged him to respond, but Surzex requested to be left alone, needing space to process his loss. Falbium supported Surzex's need for solitude, reminding everyone that he had just lost Graphia and needed time to heal. The group left Surzex to discuss their concerns with his parents, Venelina and Zeracidus, who were deeply worried about their son in the wake of Graphia's death. They feared the negative impact this could have not only on him but on the entire underworld. Venelina expressed her concern for Surzex, while Serafal confirmed that he was still grieving. Zeracidus, filled with anger, lamented how Graphia had served loyally and had even spied for their sake, only to be branded a traitor. Serafal acknowledged his anger but cautioned that charging at the government would be futile and dangerous. Venelina wept for Graphia, stating that she did not deserve such a fate. Ajuka reassured them that Graphia had not anticipated the betrayal and that the government aimed to break Surzex. Falbium vowed that vengeance would be served, declaring that the devils responsible for this tragedy were worse than monsters and would face justice. At the Fallen Angel HQ, Azazel was shocked to learn of Graphia's death, which had occurred because she had joined the rebellion. He instructed Baraquil to increase defenses on the borders, hoping that this incident would not have negative repercussions for them. Back at the Rebel HQ, Lord Agars questioned the 4 devils about their commitment to the cause. Surzex confirmed their decision to join the rebellion, while Serafal declared that the government would pay for its injustices against the citizens. Ajuka emphasized that they would not let the deaths of civilians and Graphia go unavenged. Surzex felt a surge of determination, believing he had failed Graphia but resolved to confront the government as a form of atonement. Zekrom expressed disbelief that they could kill someone so innocent, while Falbium warned that the government was ruthless and would do anything to maintain power. Zekrom feared the consequences for everyone if the government continued its reign of terror. Surzex vowed to prevent further suffering and to stop the government from driving their kind to extinction. Zekrom welcomed their newfound alliance, recognizing that they now had a fighting chance. However, he raised concerns about how to deal with Rizavim, who was not only a direct descendant of Lucifer but also possessed immense magical power. Surzex declared that he would confront Rizavim personally, driven by a fierce determination that sent shivers through everyone present. Serafal then asked about their next steps, particularly regarding the other Satans and the 6 houses aligned with them. Surzex concluded that they must declare war to stop the government's tyranny. Ajuka volunteered to confront Mao Leviathan. 6 months passed since the civil war began, and with the 4 heirs joining the rebellion, the tide had begun to turn in their favor. A decisive battle was taking place in the ruins of the former Gusion family domain, now a habitat for wild beasts. In the skies above, 2 powerful demons clashed in fierce combat. Ajuka Astaroth, the ace of resistance, and Tefarm Teriak Leviathan, the daughter of Mao Leviathan. Ajuka's troops engaged in battle with Leviathan's forces, pushing Tefarm into a corner. Forced to confront the situation, Tefarm unleashed devastating attacks against Ajuka's troops. In response, Ajuka, the only one capable of matching her power, faced her directly. They exchanged massive blasts of demonic energy high in the sky. Tefarm extended her 12 black wings, summoning the power of the Marinia Sea Serpent Dragon of the End, ready to unleash her full might in the battle ahead. Chapter End. Continuing from the previous events, things were looking promising for Surzex. With the defeat of one of the 4 Maos, Tefarm Leviathan, the rebellion had managed to breach the government's defenses, delivering a significant blow that incapacitated them. The fighting persisted for 2 months, culminating in a complete victory for the Alliance. It was during this time that Euclid Lucifuge, Graphia's younger brother, decided to join the conflict, determined to confront the Alliance once and for all. At Graphia's gravesite, Euclid vowed to avenge his sister, believing that Cersex was responsible for her death. His delusions led him to think that the Maus should rule the underworld instead of what he perceived as impostors. Graphia's demise only deepened his resentment and apathy toward the rebel cause. In a flashback, Lord Lucifuge expressed his concerns to his son, feeling uneasy about joining the government. Euclid, however, was resolute in his decision to align with them, convinced that the low-class devils did not deserve to rule. Despite his father's attempts to reason with him, Euclid remained steadfast, determined to make Cersex pay for his sister's death. He left his father's quarters, consumed by thoughts of revenge. Aware of his own limitations in strength, he sought collaboration with the House of Nibiros to devise a plan to eliminate Cersex. The plan involved using the Malbranche to transform the heir of Asmodeus into a powerful chimera, capable of defeating Cersex and demoralizing the Alliance. Lord Lucifuge reflected on his son's stubbornness and questioned whether he had raised him correctly. He sensed that something was amiss with the government, especially after the 4 heirs joined the rebel cause. Back at the rebel base in Agar's domain, Lord Agars commended Ajuka for their progress, noting that with 1 Satan down, the government's power must have diminished. Cersex, however, cautioned against underestimating their opponents. He pointed out that Tifarm was not the real threat. It was Rhizavim, the heir of Lucifer, who sought his demise. Rhizavim's power posed a significant challenge, and Cersex was wary, having never witnessed Rhizavim at full strength. Seraphol inquired about their next steps, wondering when they could confront the other 2 Maus. Ajuka suggested that they take this time to rest and recover, emphasizing the importance of their well-being for the resistance. Lord Agars agreed, urging them to return to their families, who would be eager to see them. The leaders concurred and returned home to recuperate. Both sides entered a temporary truce, recognizing the need to preserve their forces rather than engage in further conflict. They planned their next attack for 4 months later, preparing for the inevitable confrontation with Rhizavim. The rebels aimed to capitalize on their recent victory over Tifarm and advance toward the capital, Lucifad. Meanwhile, in the territory of the now-defunct Velafar family, Serfal Citri led the resistance troops against Demetus Saraikal Asmodeus, the son of Mao Asmodeus. Just as victory seemed within reach, a powerful ally arrived to bolster Asmodeus's forces. The army of the 6 families descended from Lucifer, led by Euclid Lucifuge, joined the fray, revitalizing the royal army. Positioned at the front line, Euclid faced Seraphol, who was valiantly holding back the royal troops with her formidable demonic ice powers. Dealing with Seraphol was not going to be easy for Euclid, especially since she was one of the key figures in the rebellion. Euclid was filled with rage as he confronted her, blaming Cersex for his sister's death, insisting that Rhizavim was the true monster responsible for her demise. Seraphol attempted to reason with him, explaining that Rhizavim had orchestrated the tragedy to weaken Cersex and demoralize their forces. Despite her words, Euclid remained steadfast in his anger, accusing her of betrayal and refusing to listen. As the battle between the 2 generals commenced, it was fierce and relentless, with neither side willing to back down. Countless soldiers fell in the chaos, but the determination of both armies remained unbroken. Demetus watched in despair, feeling powerless as he witnessed the intense clash. He longed to avenge his fallen comrades but knew that intervening would only lead to his own destruction. Meanwhile, the confrontation continued between Euclid and Seraphol. Euclid questioned her strength, to which Seraphol reminded him of her extensive experience in battle. He vowed to defeat her, but she pointed out how his sister would be ashamed of his current actions, siding with those who had harmed her. Euclid's fury intensified, and he lashed out at her words. In response, Seraphol unleashed her power, freezing everything in her path and incapacitating Euclid with shards of ice. He could only watch in sorrow and anger as he realized he had failed his sister. With the battle between them concluded, Seraphol turned her attention to Demedis, who regarded her with disdain, underestimating her strength despite his previous defeat. Seraphol offered Demedis a chance to surrender, but he refused, seeing her as a traitor. She warned him that his fate was sealed, but before she could finish the confrontation, Zearoma Nibiros arrived, unleashing a terrifying transformation that forced Seraphol to retreat. The appearance of the fly chimera signaled a new threat, and just then, Surzex Gremory arrived with reinforcements. Surzex checked on Seraphol, who assured him she was fine despite some bruises. He urged Demedis to surrender, pointing out the suffering of his own troops due to the poison he had released. Demedis laughed maniacally, declaring he would rather fight to the end than allow them to live. As Surzex transformed into his true form, a crimson aura enveloped him, revealing the power he had kept hidden. Demedis, now chaotic and unhinged, summoned a dense black mist that began to corrode everything in its vicinity. Surzex realized the danger of the poison and quickly took Euclid away to protect him and warn their allies. The battle escalated as the poisonous mist spread across the battlefield, affecting both armies. Soldiers gasped for breath as the toxic air overwhelmed them, causing chaos and destruction. The fly chimera moved relentlessly, its poison wreaking havoc on anyone nearby. As the creature advanced toward a nearby lake, it threatened the lives of innocent villagers who had nothing to do with the conflict. Surzex, determined to protect them, confronted Demedis, pleading for him to withdraw and spare the civilians from the war's devastation. Demedis, aware of the situation, simply smirked, indicating he had no intention of stopping. "I can smell it from a distance. In fact, I am intentionally heading there right now." Surzex hesitated, questioning whether Demedis was truly not heading for bad luck. Demedis laughed, reveling in the poison released from his body, which corrupted everything around him: animals, soldiers, nature, bringing him a twisted sense of pleasure. His eyes appeared fragile, as if something dark had taken complete control of him. Realizing that dialogue would be futile, Surzex conjured a sphere of aura of destruction in his hand and launched it, striking the chimera's torso and tearing into its flesh. A dark substance oozed out, transforming into a grotesque mass upon contact with the ground. The muscles in the injured area swelled and began to regenerate, returning to normal. Surzex understood that a medium-level power of destruction would not suffice. He needed to unleash his full strength to eliminate this beast in one decisive blow. Demedis recalled the massacre he had ordered before the war began, boasting about the fate of the choir from Gremory, which had met a cruel end amidst the chaos. He laughed, mentioning a servant of Lucifer who had been executed, dismissing the tragedy as mere entertainment for the upper class. Surzex remembered the smiles of the choir's children and the love he had for Graphia. Seeing Demedis treat the demons beneath him as insignificant, Surzex made a firm decision. He stepped forward, a powerful aura radiating from his body as the earth trembled beneath him. Surzex invoked his destruction aura, glowing crimson as he proclaimed his wish for all demons to live in peace in the underworld, not just the nobles but also the residents and animals. He wanted them to look forward to a brighter future, one that Demedis had denied them. The thick mist of poison surrounding the area began to dissipate under Surzex's immense aura. He unleashed the full extent of his power of destruction, and a gigantic humanoid form of aura of destruction materialized, a beast of destruction. Witnessing Surzex's true form, the chimera trembled in fear. Demedis found it hard to believe the aura and the form before him were manifestations of power of destruction. Despite his fear, the chimera attempted to retaliate with powerful auras and poisonous attacks, but they were effortlessly neutralized by Surzex's aura. Surzex had only revealed this true form to a select few, including his friends Seraphol, Ajuka, and Falbium. He concentrated a vast amount of aura in his hand, creating several spherical auras. He controlled these spheres with precision, launching them toward the chimera. The beast tried to defend itself, but the spheres tore through its defenses, striking its flesh. Once all the spheres were inside the creature, Surzex moved his hand forward and squeezed tightly, unleashing a devastating force. With a thunderous sound, the spheres erupted within the chimera, causing its body to disintegrate wherever the spheres made contact. This was Surzek's hidden ability, Ruin of Extinction. The Chimera's wings, legs, and torso were engulfed by the deep crimson aura, ultimately leading to its complete annihilation. The power of destruction had finally manifested. With its last breath, the Chimera questioned what was happening before it vanished entirely, leaving no trace behind. The enhanced power of destruction even eradicated the poison, preventing further contamination of the earth. Surzek powered down and rushed to Serafal, ensuring his friend was safe. However, in a moment of vulnerability, a tendril pierced Serafal, leaving her limp and lifeless. Surzek cried out in despair, realizing the gravity of the situation. Euclid laughed maniacally, reveling in his perceived victory and claiming that Graphia would be proud. Enraged, Surzek charged at Euclid, tearing into him with overwhelming force. Euclid screamed in agony, feeling as if he were being torn apart. In his weakened state, he had no chance against Surzek's fury. Surzek expressed regret that he had to resort to this, especially since Euclid was Graphia's brother, but he felt he had no choice. He charged a blast of destruction aimed at Euclid, declaring that it was time for him to be gone. With that, Euclid was erased from existence, leaving nothing behind. Surzek found solace in the thought that he would be reunited with his sister. He then resolved to meet Lord Lucifuge to inform him of his son's demise. Chapter End. Continuing from the previous events, the Resistance was experiencing a turning point. One more descendant of Satan had been defeated, causing the old Satan faction to lose morale and determination. In response, Rizavim Levon Lucifer, the current leader of the old Satan faction, took drastic measures that resulted in the loss of thousands of resistance troops and innocent civilians. The battle was disastrous for both sides, with numerous casualties and many soldiers left injured and demoralized. Surzek, although badly injured, eventually recovered both physically and mentally. He inquired about the status of the war and the casualties. The general reported that there were thousands of casualties on both sides, with several soldiers injured and some even contemplating surrender due to the overwhelming presence of the Lucifer descendant. Surzek decided that they would lay low for the time being, allowing their strength and morale to recover. He emphasized the need to recruit more soldiers to prepare for the inevitable confrontation. At midnight, a state of emergency was declared at the Resistance headquarters in the castle of Eligorum Domain. The line of defense on the border of the former Eliger domain had been ambushed. Although the attack occurred some distance away, the breach could not be ignored. Troops, awakened by the commotion, armed themselves for the emergency. An officer entered the strategy room and asked about the ambushing force. The guard confirmed that the attackers bore the flags of Lord Egalariept and Lord Floretti. Zikram Bale, remaining calm, noted that 2 of the 6 families descended from Lucifer had set an ambush with an elite force of approximately 200 troops. He speculated that they had likely hidden in blind spots, unnoticed by their own troops. Falbium Glaciolabilus, the current advisor to the Resistance army, sat next to Zikram. Though he appeared unenthusiastic, he was known for his effective strategies. He suggested that the Eliger family, previously under Floretti's control during the Great War, might have known secret passages that the Resistance did not. He speculated that the ambush indicated a desperate move, as normally the Lucifugus family would be there to prevent such actions. Zikram requested Falbium to take action, believing that the quickest way to resolve the situation was for him to leave. Falbium, with a resigned expression, acknowledged the complexity of the situation. At the border of the former Eliger domain, the Royal Army troops unleashed a powerful aura towards the Resistance's defenses. The elite force, led by Lords Egalariept and Floretti, aimed to take Zikram Bale's head, believing it would change the course of the war. The air was filled with magical explosions as they targeted the Resistance. Amidst the chaos, a demon with a titanium body emerged from the line of defense, undeterred by the relentless magical attacks. The ground shook with the force of the explosions, creating a cloud of dust that obscured the battlefield. As the dust settled, Falbium stood unharmed, much to the shock of the attacking leaders. Despite the barrage of magic, Falbium calmly stated that their efforts would not succeed. The leader of Lord Egalariept, frustrated, ordered his troops to continue firing. However, the orange aura surrounding Falbium remained unaffected by the onslaught. Even as the attacks persisted, he maintained his usual demeanor, remarking on his relative obscurity compared to Surzek's. Falbium was known for his absolute defense ability, which allowed him to block all attacks. His aura intensified, rendering him impervious to even the most powerful magical assaults. It was said that only a few demons in the underworld could pose a threat to him, including Surzek's, Ajuka, Serafal, Graphia, and Rizavim Levon Lucifer. Yet, absolute defense was not his only skill. He had also developed a unique aura that complemented his abilities. Once the dust generated by the attacks of demonic power had settled, Falbium shifted his orange aura and took an offensive stance. He reflected on how no one had yet witnessed his true strategy, having only revealed it to a select few friends. He pondered whether others perceived him merely as a tough opponent who enjoyed strategizing, wondering if that misconception led them to believe they had a chance against him. In any case, Falbium resolved to demonstrate their error. He released an overwhelming amount of aura from his body, instilling terror in the royal army while simultaneously instilling fear in the allied resistance troops. With outstretched hands, he unleashed a colossal wave of aura toward the royal army, nearly obliterating everything in its path. This attack was designed to absorb all incoming offenses, allowing him to counterattack with even greater demonic power. The more powerful the attacks he endured, the stronger his retaliation became. Soon, Falbium unleashed all the absorbed energy in a single explosion of demonic power. Each strike aimed at him was returned in a combined blast that no one could survive. In front of the resistance, only a vast, scorched landscape remained. The entire royal army had been devastated, leaving only the leaders of houses Egalariepte and Fleuretti, along with a few fortunate soldiers who had narrowly escaped death. Those who survived bore severe injuries, and without timely treatment, death awaited them. Falbium had anticipated this outcome. He believed it would be more advantageous to take some living hostages rather than eliminate them entirely. The heads of the Egalariepte and Fleuretti houses knelt on the ground, glaring at Falbium with anger. Zekrom, who had appeared using a magic teleportation circle, assessed the situation. He noted that the leaders of Egalariepte and Fleuretti were still alive and suggested taking them into custody. Despite being enemies, they had supported the Maos during the Great War of the Three Factions. Zekrom raised his hand, instructing his subordinates to place anti-magic HNDCFFS on the survivors. The two leaders were taken back to the resistance headquarters. The leaders of the houses struggled to conceal their fury at their defeat. Zekrom, after ensuring the capture of those responsible for the ambush, reviewed the latest report on the state of the war. He noted that Surzek had successfully defeated the Fly Chimera and had also eliminated both Euclid Lucifuge and Demetus Sirical Asmodeus. Despite the fall of Serafal Citri and the loss of thousands of soldiers due to Rizavim's interference, they had secured significant victories. Falbium expressed concern over the loss of soldiers, indicating that it was not a favorable situation for King Baal. Zekrom acknowledged that both sides had suffered losses, but noted that the defeat of two Satan descendants was a silver lining, allowing them a moment of respite. The leaders of the houses were shocked to learn of the deaths of two Satans, as it was their duty to protect them. They resolved to defeat Falbium to shift the balance back in favor of the Satans. In a desperate act, they decided to activate self-destruct devices embedded within their bodies, intending to take others down with them. With the resistance base weakened, they believed they could still make a significant impact. Falbium sensed the impending danger and rushed to intervene, but it was too late. The self-destruct devices detonated, triggering a massive explosion that nearly obliterated the base. Many soldiers perished, and thousands at the station were injured. Falbium managed to survive the blast and surveyed the destruction around him. The castle lay in ruins, and he searched for survivors, spotting the Devil King Zekrom Baal struggling to stay alive. Falbium rushed to assist the elderly devil, helping him to sit. Zekrom's injuries were grave, and despite Falbium's efforts to remain calm, he realized he should not have spared the two lords who had resorted to such a cowardly tactic. He called for a medic, but there was no response. Several devils attempted to use healing magic, but their efforts were in vain. The nearest medical station was miles away, and all they could do was watch in silence as another vital member of the resistance slipped away. Zekrom, with his remaining strength, spoke to Falbium, warning him about Rhizavim. He expressed that his duty had been to protect them. Falbium urged him to hold on, calling for help, but the soldiers were overwhelmed, as most who knew healing magic were either severely injured or dead. With his last breath, Zekrom instructed Falbium to tell Surzex not to imprison Rhizavim but to eliminate him. With that, Zekrom succumbed to his injuries, marking the loss of the oldest devil. Falbium vowed to give the old man a proper burial, one befitting a soldier. Meanwhile, in the capital city of Lucifad, Rhizavim was furious, questioning the foolishness of his subordinates. He learned that the resistance had wiped out Euclid and Demetos, and that Surzex had inflicted heavy losses on his army. Rhizvan, his son, inquired about their next steps. Rhizavim, with a sinister expression, revealed he had a plan to break the young Surzex Gremry. In a large residential district where the families of the Maus resided, access was restricted to members of the royal families and their affiliates. Among the vast luxury estates stood Lucifer's enormous castle. Preparing to move from the castle was Rhizavim Levon Lucifer, son of Lucifer, who was enlisting his son, Rhizvan, to help pack for the relocation. Amidst their preparations, a visitor arrived at the castle. In the spacious room on the first floor, Vidriad Varsharn Beelzebub, clad in Beelzebub's black armor, met with Rhizavim. The two had known each other since childhood, however, they were not exactly friends. As the sons of Maus Lucifer and Beelzebub, they had to maintain a relationship, regardless of their personal feelings. Rhizavim greeted Vidriad with a smile, acknowledging his presence. Vidriad informed Rhizavim that he had heard about his fight against the resistance during their invasion of Lucifat. Rhizavim laughed bitterly, expressing his lack of interest in the civil war and suggesting that Vidriad had come to scold him. Rhizavim warned Vidriad that he would lose everything: his class, power, and lands, implying that his pride would be challenged, leading to regret. Vidriad smirked, confidently asserting that he would not lose anything. Rhizavim expressed doubt about Vidriad's attitude, questioning whether he had inherited his father's pride. Vidriad, neither confirming nor denying, remarked that Rhizavim had the potential to defeat the resistance army, angels, fallen angels, and even other mythological deities, acknowledging the darkness that resided within Rhizavim. Rhizavim questioned Vidriad's intentions, sensing that he was not trying to persuade him with flattery. Vidriad explained that there were demons at Rhizavim's side who outnumbered the Maus. He noted that even in the human realm, the sacred gears system, left behind by the God of the Bible, continued to function, and the Longinus were increasing in number. He warned that no one could halt the course of these events, suggesting that in the distant future, even if Rhizavim dedicated all his power, he would likely be defeated by this flow. Rhizavim laughed, unsure whether Vidriad was warning or threatening him, reminding him that he possessed the only sacred gear canceller. Their conversation concluded, and Vidriad turned to leave. Rhizavim called out a parting remark, wishing him a meaningful death. This brief exchange took place in the capital city of Lucifad, while the civil war between the Maus families and the resistance was nearing its end. As the flashback concluded, Rhizvan and Rhizavim made their way toward the devil territories of Gremry, deciding to enter the castle of the Gremry household. The members were alerted to their presence. Zorocidus greeted them, attempting to mask the disdain in his voice, aware that these two were descendants of the Lucifer family, albeit only in name. He knew that he had to be careful, otherwise they would be the ones to join the next battle. Rhizavim addressed Lord and Lady Gremry, requesting that they convince their son to abandon his efforts in the resistance. Venelina expressed her concern, stating that once Surzex made up his mind, it was nearly impossible to change it. Rhizavim, with a sinister smile, acknowledged their response, indicating that he had no choice. Venelina, her voice trembling with fear, questioned his intentions. Rhizavim ominously declared that this was where the fun would begin. Continuing from the previous events, Surzex found himself in a fierce confrontation against Rhizavim, the mastermind who had taken everything from him. his beloved Graphia Lucifuge, her brother Euclid, and even his close friend Seraphol. The situation was dire, with Ajuka and Falbium struggling against the forces of Satan. It was a critical moment. They had to fight for their lives or risk losing everything they had sacrificed. Ryzavim proclaimed that the resistance was finished and the war was over. He intended to eliminate Surzex, the last rebel. Surzex sighed, recognizing the arrogance of his opponent. He understood that this battle would determine the future of the underworld. Surzex firmly stated that everything Ryzavim had said was wrong. The final battle commenced between the last descendant of Satan and the resilient rebel leader. Only one of them would survive, and only one of their ideals would prevail. To understand how they arrived at this moment, one must rewind to the day before the final battle. Surzex had just visited the Gremory mansion. Upon entering, he noticed the absence of servants and guards, fearing the worst. It had been weeks since he had been in his childhood home, and he rushed to check on his parents, hoping they were safe, especially after Lord Bale had perished due to a tragic incident. As he entered, he was met with a horrifying sight. The house that had once been filled with warmth was now tainted with destruction. The air was thick with the stench of decay, and the remnants of violence were evident everywhere. Servants and soldiers lay lifeless, and the fate of the maids was even more tragic. Surzex felt a deep dread for his parents, knowing who was responsible for this devastation. He searched desperately for survivors, but it seemed that everyone had succumbed to despair. His heart raced as he entered his parents' chambers, only to find his father's head displayed gruesomely. Panic surged within him as he sought his mother, finding her gravely injured. Venelina was in a terrible state, her injuries severe, and he realized she did not have much time left. Overcome with sorrow, Surzex wept for his parents. Venelina managed to utter a few words, urging him to stay safe before she passed away. Surzex cried out Ryzavim's name, cradling his parents' bodies in despair. Hours later, the armies prepared for battle on both sides, aware that this was a pivotal moment, either they would live or die. In the capital city of Lucifad, Ryzavim sat on his throne, reveling in the chaos he had caused. He knew that by tormenting Surzex, he could weaken the rebellion. Razvan approached his father, troubled by the madness he witnessed. Ryzavim questioned his son, who was horrified by the violence. Razvan expressed confusion over the need for such brutality, suggesting that a quick death would have sufficed. Ryzavim explained his twisted philosophy, emphasizing that devils were meant to embody evil and that fighting for justice was a trait of the weak. As Razvan confronted his father, he remained unaware of the sinister intentions behind Ryzavim's smile. Ryzavim summoned a magical sword and, in a shocking turn, attacked his own son, leaving Razvan in disbelief. The story had reached a critical juncture, and the fate of many hung in the balance as the final battle loomed. In a universe familiar to many, Asia Argento was abducted by Rainier and her minions, who sought to extract her sacred gear. However, after Issei defeated them and Rias eliminated Rainier, Asia was revived as a bishop of the Gremory household. But in an alternate, darker universe, the roles were reversed. Instead of Asia being kidnapped, Issei fell victim to this fate. His sacred gear was extracted, leading to his demise during the process. Rainier briefly possessed the gear but was unable to activate the boosted gear. Fueled by rage, Asia eventually confronted Rainier, ultimately defeating her in a fierce battle. This act of vengeance set off a chain of events that would alter the supernatural landscape when a determined nun wielded the power of the boosted gear. The Devil Civil War marked a pivotal moment that transformed the underworld forever. In a time when the desire for peace clashed with the thirst for war, Surzex Gremory and his allies rose against the original Satans, who prioritized war and royalty over the welfare of their people. The rebels, led by Surzex, Seraphol, Ajuka, Graphia, and Falbium, succeeded in defeating the original Satans, establishing a new era of peace and happiness. However, in a darker universe, the story took a tragic turn. Civilians were not only caught in the crossfire, but Graphia's relationship with Surzex was exposed much earlier, leading to her execution. The once kind-hearted devil, who sought a better future for his people, was consumed by darkness and vengeance. The fate of the underworld and its leaders hung in the balance as they faced this vengeful alternate version of Surzex. The narrative continued to evolve, hinting at a new fanfiction inspired by the Light Multiverse series. This upcoming story would draw from the Evil Dragon War arc, promising a twist ending and a fresh perspective on the DXD series. The first part would be released soon, inviting readers to stay tuned for the unfolding adventure.